We need time to establish an orderly withdrawal. And as stipulated by the European Council in April, we need this transition period that was actually officially requested by Theresa May at the speech that she made in Florence for the first time. The transition period is useful, and it will enable the administration in Britain, the public administration in Britain, to get prepared, to prepare themselves for the kind of challenges that they will have to face at their borders, which are also our borders, and to prepare also for the complications of and also prepare for the new relationship. And that's why this transition period, as requested by the United Kingdom, is indeed useful and is part of an orderly withdrawal from the European Union. I'd like to talk now about the underpinning principles of this of negotiations for these for this transition period. There's nothing new. They're in the European Council guidelines as well. Any transition period would have to respect these principles and safeguard these principles as set out by the European Council in April and by the European Parliament in its resolutions. There are 5 that I'd like to refer to. The integrity of the single market. Any transition would have to cover all of the economic sectors that are covered by the single market, and the 4 freedoms would of course remain indivisible. They are the foundation of the single market after all. Secondly, the integrity of the customs union. The common customs tariff is a key aspect of the customs union and would still apply during the transition period, as indeed would border inspections on products from third countries. The third point, the third principle, is that all of the new rules adopted by the European Union during the transition period would apply to the United Kingdom and be subject to the European agencies, the European Commission, the Court of Justice, as well, the European Union Court of Justice. The fourth principle is that this cannot be an à la carte transition period. The EU regulatory framework and all EU policies will still apply. The fifth principle is that the EU's autonomy of decision-making would still apply. The United Kingdom would become a third country on the morning of the 30th of March 2018 and will no longer therefore be part of the institutions of the European Union. So this means that during the transition period, the United Kingdom will keep all of the benefits, all of the advantages, but also all of the obligations and duties of the single market, the customs union, and our common policies. This transition period will meet the concerns, answer to some extent the concerns of business. They've told us that they need stability. They need stability during the transition period. Continuity, therefore, a continuity of the existing regulatory framework. And also that over and above this continuity and stability, they don't want to have to adapt twice. So keep the whole of the regulatory framework in place, for business in particular, means that they only need to adapt once at the end of the transition period. Of course, they need to start preparing for this right now. Another important point, which is also in the European Council decisions, relates to the duration of the transition period. It should be of a short and specific duration. At Florence, Theresa May, in her speech, referred to a maximum of 2 years. Our position, the European Commission's position, is that this would run logically to the 31st of December 2020, because that's also the end of, that's also the duration of the current multi-annual financial framework. Now you might be wondering when we'll actually adopt the transition period and decide on the duration and the details of the transition period, because of course we're aware of the fact that a lot of citizens, businesses, companies, universities, public administrations want clarity as soon as possible. But the legal base of this, and the only legal base of the transition period, is Article 50. Let me just remind you of that. And if we don't have an orderly withdrawal under Article 50, then there won't be a transition period. So these two things go hand in hand. Everything to do with the withdrawal, on the basis of the joint report that was approved a week ago, which will be at the core of the withdrawal agreement, and the transition period, which will be decided upon on the same legal basis. So the transition period is part of the withdrawal agreement. We have to finalise the content by October 2018 in the Article 50 treaty, in the new Article 50 treaty. Because also we need to give the European Parliament and the Council and the British authorities, the British Parliament, we need to give them time to take a position on this agreement. So the transition and finalising the withdrawal agreement go hand in hand, as I said. This orderly withdrawal based on paragraph 96 of the joint report. We will not be moving backwards on any of the points or reopening any of the points that were subject to the stipulation of sufficient progress in the European Council. Obviously, we'll be looking at our future relationship with the United Kingdom from March, after the European Council, which will adopt new guidelines. We'll be deciding on a new, very important document that needs to be finalised by October 2018, parallel to the Article 50 treaty, a political document which would accompany the withdrawal agreement and should clearly stipulate and outline the shape of our future relationship. I was at the European Parliament. I also went to the European Council at President Tusk's invitation, and the heads of state and government of the 27 member states want to know clearly in October what the direction is that we're taking, what the shape of our future relationship with the United Kingdom will be. In the political declaration, we need to define the framework of the future relationship. We'll need more time, of course, for more details. And that will be a parallel document to the Article 50 treaty on the ordered withdrawal from the European Union and the transition period. So when the transition period starts, we'll know exactly what the transition is a transition towards. So just to be absolutely clear on this, the framework of the future relationship, of course, this will be scrupulously in line with the guidelines from the European Council. But we do know what we're going towards, what we're moving towards already, because we know the various types of partnerships that we have with other third countries. I've illustrated this on slides that have been relatively widely disseminated. And we would then, when it comes to deciding the basis of the future relationship and the framework of the future relationship, the factor that would decide the nature of the future relationship is the red lines expressed by the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom said themselves that they don't want to be in the single market because they don't want to respect the four freedoms. The United Kingdom itself, through its government, is saying that they don't want to be part of the customs union because they want sovereignty to make trade policy and trade policy agreements themselves. So that's not something that we're imposing on them. That's something that the United Kingdom has said itself. They've said that they won't recognise, for example, the authority of the European Court of Justice. So, taking into account what the United Kingdom has said to us, what their position is, that has consequences, of course, on them and on us.
Michel Barnier there, the EU's chief negotiator, outlining the way ahead, and some interesting things emerging. First of all, he says that he wants the deal, such as it is, the framework for future relations, to be agreed by October 2018. That's less than a year's time. We knew that. And he then said that the transition period will end at the latest at the end of 2020, December 31st, 2020. So that means the transition period is time limited to less than 2 years. Remember, the phrase before was around 2 years.